Hey, it's Jorge from Oh So Fast Reviews. Today I'll be reviewing Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1, Winter is Coming. So the show starts off kind of wild. You know, what the heck is happening with all these dead people? And, you kind of see this little girl who was on a tree, I guess, kind of like with through a spear or something. Um, and then one of those three guys, they start walking and they see, the little girl again, but this time she has blue eyes. And then that really tall guy ends up chopping off that dude's head. So the intro was definitely was an interesting one. So definitely not sure if everyone survived or died, but I definitely thought that was a hell of an intro. From there, we kind of see that the one kid is still alive. For whatever reason, they let him go. And then you kind of see kind of an introduction to, I think it was called Winterfell. It kind of starts off showing this little kid with a bow and arrow, kind of missing and just not shooting too well. And then randomly, this little girl just kind of jumps out there, grabs a bow, and hits the bullseye. They start talking about White Walkers, which I thought was kind of weird. Not really sure what that's about. But the guy, I guess the one who escaped when he got there, he kind of let them know, hey, I know I'm a deserter, but the White Walkers are coming, or some weird stuff like that. Um, Definitely thought it was kind of wild. I mean, they just chopped off his head, just straight and simple. I did find it interesting. I guess I don't know if he's a king or what he is, but how he says to his son, the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then as they're going down, they end up seeing, I guess, this type of wolf. I don't know what type of wolf it was that they said, but obviously his son wanted to keep it, but they said no. And then there was a guy who basically said, there's five pups, there's five kids, and obviously, like, what are the odds of that? Um, and then I guess he ends up finding another one, a six. And then one of the guys there just says, give it to Stone or Snow, I believe is his name. But either way, I thought that was weird. Then you kind of get a jump over to King's Landing, where you see some type of crazy ritual happening. Um, and then there's a bird that flies off saying something like a raven from King's Landing, letting them know that I think it was Jon is dead. So I thought that was weird as well. But then it also alerted them that the king was riding into Winterfell with the queen. So I thought that was interesting. It kind of jumps back to, I guess, I think it's the youngest son, how he's just kind of a climber. It shows him just scaling this wall, which I thought was very cool. Um, and then the guy who runs Winterfell, I believe his name was Ned. He gets asked to help the king. So I thought that was kind of interesting. From there, you kind of go into this weird scene where I guess like this brother goes there who I guess was supposed to be a rightful king or ruler, but he basically just like checks out his sister and she just kind of jumps into the water that's supposedly too hot. I thought that scene was kind of weird. Um, and then he mentioned something as the Drogo will marry his sister. But halfway through doing this, the sister basically says, the Marius, I believe her name is, she says, oh, she just wants to go home. But her brother kind of lays down the law, and I think it's something like, I'll let them, if there were 40 men or 40,000 men there, I'll let them and their horses sleep with you if that means he gets an army. So thought that was a little crazy. It jumps back over to Winterfell, I believe, and they're having this, crazy feast is starting. Um, I think Jon Snow is outside, and I guess he runs into his uncle, and then you have, I forgot what his name is, the dwarf. Basically, you have him calling him a bastard just over and over again, which I thought was kind of wild. And then he basically ends it with a with an interesting line. I think John looks at him and goes, why, you don't know what it's like to be called a bastard, and he just kind of laughs it off, and he's like, when you're a dwarf, you are a bastard. from there you kind of jump off into this crazy wedding scene that's happening, um, which I think was just crazy. But you know, the sister ends up getting some dragon eggs, which I thought was kind of cool. Then you kind of go back into Winterfell, and you kind of see the Brandon, I believe his name is, the one who's a climber. You kind of see him climbing, and he hears people having sex, and when he looks in, it ends up being the brother and sister that were in the ritual. And I'm gonna have to get all these names down sooner or later, so forgive me for not knowing all the names. But then all of a sudden, the brother just looks at her and he's like, you know, what I do for love, and ends up just shoving this little 10-year-old out from, you know, I'll say what, probably 3, 4 stories up. And then the episode ends. So far, very intrigued, very interesting. Not sure where, you know, what or what all's happening with it. There's kind of all these little, I guess for better lack, you know, kind of kingdoms that are happening. Obviously, people are in charge who other people don't want to be in charge. I have no idea who the good guys are in this right now or who the bad guys are. So that's kind of an interesting take. Usually in the first episode of a show, they kind of break it down a little bit cleaner. Definitely looking forward to episode 2 and the rest of this season. Just trying to see what all this hype has been about for the past couple years. Obviously, I know I'm late to the bandwagon, but it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this show goes on from there. But overall, yeah, so far so good, and obviously one episode in, so we'll see where it goes from here. But other than that, this is Jorge from Mosafaz Reviews, and I will definitely see you guys for the next episode's review.